Let's bring you up to speed on the fresh doubts over the ceasefire in Iran. It follows reports of strikes on vessels in the Strait of Hormuz. Tehran claims its forces have struck an American warship. Meanwhile, Donald Trump says the US military fired at 7 small Iranian vessels in the shipping channel after Iran targeted boats unconnected to countries involved in the conflict. The US president, though, didn't seek to ease fears when appearing on American TV last night.
Is the ceasefire over, Mr. President? Is it over? We're going to hit him tonight?
Well, I can't tell you that.
All right, that's fine.
You wouldn't. If I answered that question, you just say this man is not smart enough to be leading the United States of America.
Well, Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has posted on social media saying events in Hormuz make clear that there's no military solution to a political crisis. Talks making progress with Pakistan's gracious effort. The US should be wary of being dragged back into quagmire by ill wishes. So should the UAE. Project Freedom is Project Deadlock. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister has said the UK condemns the drone and missile strikes targeting the United Arab Emirates. As I set out during my visit to the region last month, stability in the Gulf directly affects the UK. We stand in solidarity with the UAE and will continue to support the defence of our partners in the Gulf. The escalation must cease. Iran needs to engage meaningfully in negotiations to ensure the ceasefire in the Middle East endures and a long-term diplomatic solution is achieved. Let's hear from the captain of one of the hundreds of ships stranded in the Gulf.
It is quite disturbing, and my crew morale is again, going down. So it is really very upset to know again they are attacking merchant ships. Our prime priority is to keep the vessels safe at the moment and just maintain our position and wait for right opportunity and wait for war to come an end, or wait for the Strait of Hormuz to reopen safely.
Elsewhere, tensions rising between Israel and Lebanon. The Israeli military said its forces were targeted by Hezbollah overnight. Claims the Iran-backed militant group launched several mortar shells towards an area in which the IDF soldiers are operating in southern Lebanon. The Lebanese Health Ministry said Israeli strikes on the south of the country killed 17 people yesterday, bringing the number of those killed since Thursday to 110. Fighting between Israel and Hezbollah continuing despite an ongoing 3-week ceasefire extension. Well, let's bring in Sally Lockwood, who's in Dubai. Sally, there's supposed to be 2 ceasefires in force, but it really doesn't feel like that. 17 people killed, 110 since Thursday. Meanwhile, the US saying it's targeted 7 Iranian ships, Iran saying it's fired missiles at US ships. The situation continues at a pace, but let's be honest, in the wrong direction.
Yeah, both ceasefires do seem more fragile than ever, and it will come as little comfort to people here in the UAE that Donald Trump declined to comment on whether the ceasefire between the US and Iran remains in effect. But certainly at 5 p.m. last night, it didn't feel much like a ceasefire here, with emergency alerts blaring on people's mobile phones for the first time in around 4 weeks. WhatsApp conversations lighting up, people collectively sending messages of complete dismay and concern that they were once again receiving emergency alerts for incoming fire from Iran. And we now know it was 15 missiles and 4 drones fired at the UAE overnight, including 4 cruise missiles. Most of those were intercepted, but there was a fire at a major oil facility in Fujairah, the eastern emirate of Fujairah, where 3 Indian citizens were injured. They've been taken to hospital and are being treated at the moment. But that's really significant because Fujairah sits on the Gulf of Oman. It's a key port now for the UAE, while the Strait of Hormuz remains in the state it's in this state of complete paralysis, so dangerous for commercial vessels to pass, no matter how much Donald Trump tries to solve this real headache that he now has in this war. So a lot of vessels are coming into Fujairah instead. Around 70% of food normally comes into Gulf states via the Strait of Hormuz, so they're having to be much more creative with where they are getting their food from. So Fujairah has become very important for that, but it also has a major oil pipeline that runs from Abu Dhabi to Fujairah, allowing the UAE to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, and it's been able to continue exporting a little over half of its oil production throughout this war because of Fujairah port. But that was hit by Iran in these attacks last night and caused damage by all accounts. And that really does send a message from Iran that they can still hit countries like the UAE, which have incredible air defences. They can still hit them where it hurts. And what has been the result of all this? Well, very shortly after these emergency alerts and attacks last night, the Education Authority here announced that schools and nurseries and universities were to be closed from today until the end of the week. So we're back to remote schooling. A lot of people don't see that resuming come Monday. There's a lot of concern. I've heard from people today who've already booked flights back to the UK later this week because they just don't see schools reopening on Monday. And on top of that, there was a lot of flight disruptions as well. Flights turned around midair. We could see on flight radar that the airspace around the UAE was cleared for a period, but that has returned to normal now. And it does really feel like a waiting game here for the next, certainly, 72 hours, which are going to prove critical because it seems that the US is determined to try and, initiate this Project Freedom, as it's known, to reinstate commercial shipping through the Strait of Hormuz with military support, a huge amount of US military support. But from what we understand, they will not be escorted by naval vessels. This will merely be done in coordination with the US Navy and the US military. And for as long as Iran continue to attack vessels, as we saw yesterday, and retaliate with missile and drone attacks, it's very unlikely that insurers and ship owners are going to deem this a safe enough option for commercial shipping to resume. So what next? Well, diplomatic efforts are not going at all well either. So at the moment, they'll either have to talk their way out of this, which isn't looking promising, or they'll have to return to potential fighting, which it doesn't seem either side really wants to do. No one has declared this ceasefire over just yet, but it certainly feels extremely fragile, and it's something people here are really concerned about.